What happens when you have instantaneous pain? Answer the question. His breathing stops. That pain will cause a shutdown of the breathing mechanism. You can address this and magnify it by coming right in towards the breathing. If you hit the pneumogastric envelope, or you come into the xiphoid to inhibit the diaphragmatic dome, if you're attacking the breathing, not only are you causing pain, but you're inhibiting the ventilatory process, which we discuss in depth in arthrokinetics. Mechanoreception, proprioception, and nociception is the disintegration of his breathing movement and alignment we need to start shoving him into the vortex. The three manifestations of fear reactivity are going to precipitate your counter-assault onto your opponent. Now, when we look at fear reactivity, remember that we have that performance probe where we target index, and however his fear reactivity starts to manifest, that determines how we're going to cascade over top of him. Later on, when we get to the performance spiral, we'll see that this is more readily discernible than it sounds. But let's break it down into its barest fundamentals. Fear reactivity has three types, and it's based upon physiology. He's either going to have concentric fear reactivity. If you throw this probe out, he's going to fall into a flinch. Like he'll draw his hands up to protect him. Now, the stronger his fear reactivity, the greater the magnitude of the flinch. Concentric. Now remember the old adage, you can hold more than you can lift. You can slow down more than you can hold. Now that also applies, those terms apply. Lifting is concentric, holding is isometric, and eccentric is slowing down. This applies to fear reactivity, how it manifests in his muscular tension. Remember, sensitization, sensitivity, irritability, contractibility. Isometric is a co-contraction, meaning that both the agonist and antagonistic muscles are flexing. That means that he braces in place, almost like when you're about to careen into an accident, you defensively brace, which is the worst thing that could happen because you're completely immobile. So as you throw the performance probe out, isometric contraction, he's defensively bracing. All right, the final aspect is eccentric. Like say I throw this performance probe out and I grab a hold of him, he tries to brake, B-R-A-K-E, like slow down the motion. Like as I pull, he tries to slow it down. He's not pulling back, he's slowing it down, he's resisting. So you have those three aspects of fear reactivity. Concentric, which is the flinch, isometric, which is the defensive bracing, and eccentric, which is the resisting, the slowing down. It's the eccentric, and you find this in arthrokinetics, eccentric is the strongest muscular action, so it's moving him into a position of strength. When he is eccentric in his fear reactivity, know that he's in a position of maximal strength. So we have to look at how to manipulate the different types of fear reactivity in order to maximize our efficacy. Next, we'll go into different configurations of controlling density. Remember that the goal is controlling density. Earlier in the series, I described that a punch is not a punch is not a punch. If you say punch, instantly you have a visual signature recognition where you go in and you access the technique of punching, whatever it happens to be at that point in time. We were going to work on force vectors in triangulation for shock engineering. Once we start thinking of terms that are raw in their physics, then we're not attaching any pre-programmed reaction to it. The same thing is going to be true here. When I describe these different configurations of tie-ups, I want you to focus on force vectors. Force vectors. We'll start with the wedge. This is a pretty frequent, go ahead. Pretty frequent hold. Now, when both arms are applied, the goal is to keep the elbows on the solar plexus. Why? Because we're trying to polarize him. When we start applying all of our force at his solar plexus, it becomes mobile down at the lunar plexus. So if Sean now gives him a wing where he's doing one locking arm, one power transfer, It's going to throw Mike around the ring. And okay, stop. Focusing on the hands. Can you come this way? The goal here is to wrap with the strongest part of your hand, which is the pinky, using the underside to hook. 2 fingers should be hooking onto the muscles in the back of the neck. But the goal should be, turn this way, the goal should be to control, this is one end of the lever, and the elbow and the solar plexus is the opposite end of the lever. Sean should be pulling down while pressing with the elbows back on the solar plexus so it stabilizes. If he pulls down too much without the assist of the elbows, he pulls Mike into a low hook where Mike can get a body clasp. If he pushes too much with the elbows and doesn't counter pull with the hands, he's not going to stabilize and lock in the solar plexus, and Mike will be able to pop his head out backwards by dropping his hips. So the goal here is to create a lever through the application of the elbow and the back grasp on the neck. The next is to have one neck overhook and one arm coming inside on the delivery system of this wedge. So if Sean has a double overhook on the neck, Mike's going to snake his forearm through and behind the neck, and the other arm's going to come up just to the delivery system. This is not a secure hold. The purpose is not the hold here, but to be able to control the delivery system here. If Mike merely lifts his elbow while pulling down on the bicep, the lever is actually where Sean's elbow is. Come back down. Here's one end of the lever, here's the other. Just from here, Mike can screw Sean's elbow outward, and that's going to give him the ability to either shoot through and get a body clasp, or to upset him, application of knees, or to start inserting blows. Let's go one step further. So Sean comes in and he applies a wedge. Mike snakes in, gets the inside on the neck, and then comes into the delivery system. Now what Sean's going to do is he has easy access to this. All he's going to do is underhook the elbow and come up to the shoulder. When he comes up to the shoulder, relax for a moment, guys. What you should be doing is sliding from the trap down to the body contour of the deltoid. There's a natural body contour that'll hook on here. Once you're in the inside, when you underhook the elbow, ride the trap and pull down to the deltoid. That's going to distract the joint. Once you have the joint distraction, you're controlling the plane of the shoulders. Okay, you guys get in there again. Notice that Sean can't just grab onto the shoulder. He has to underhook the elbow with his elbow pit. Now as he pulled down here, can you turn this way? Look what happened to, one more turn, Mike's hold over here. Mike can't pry with this elbow because the fingers have been pinched. Sean's pulling down on the neck to compress the side of the head, almost like a shoulder crossface, by circling the shoulder over on the underhook on his elbow. From here, there's great application of knees and to release and start applying upward architecture blows. Now this next position happens quite a bit in mixed martial art competition, but it also frequently happens in subject control situations where you're trying to apply an immobilization to an individual and they're accessing a weapon or applying blows with their free hand. So instead of making this an exchange of blows, if Sean were to first, okay, Mike, grab an underhook on Sean's shoulder. Sean has a free arm here to apply blows or perhaps access a weapon if he has it. Mike's job, instead of getting into a fight here, and that makes this hold neutral, it makes it somewhat useless, because if Sean's plastic, he can still apply blows just like Mike. It becomes a non-dominant position. But if Mike brings his arm in to control the delivery system of the other appendage, now this becomes neutralized. Now, a few points here. Mike's not grabbing with his hand. If Mike grabs with his hand, look what changes in the density of his arm. By grabbing with his hand, he now has to apply all of the structure of his arm, which can be released by Sean moving his arm out of the way. However, if Mike just keeps this Allen wrench facing forward, as Sean tries to move it, Mike's just marrying to whatever force is being applied or removed. Okay, stop. This can be slid down to the wrist. There's a natural body contour of sliding down to the expansion of the hand. As Mike slides down, his goal is to heavy hand it down. As he pulls the arm downward, Sean only has access to his deltoid, a little muscle, in order to bring his hand back in play. Whereas Mike can, at any time, change and apply a blow. Suppose Sean's trying to lift his arm. That gives Mike the opportunity to go with the force and careen into a closer grasp or to another blow. A double underhook is often misused by making it like a forward gut wrench. As the body's clasped, the only thing that's controlled is a small portion of the spine. The goal is to marry the solar plexus. So, can you grab a hold? Sean's going to make the point of application an downward diagonal angle to bring the solar plexus married into his own. What happens is that lifts the shoulder plane of Mike. As Mike's shoulders are lifted, now he no longer has access to motoric action. He can't move, he can move his arms, but it will only be arm strength. It's not married to the rest of his body. They're isolated appendages. So as Sean pulls down at an angle, now wherever Sean goes, Mike goes. Now this is a great application of throws or to move Mike into an object, into a wall, into a fence, to the edge of the ring, or to throw him into moving obstacles like traffic. Okay, a standard hold is a neutral tie, the old WWF. We want to avoid this at all costs. So we're going to take a look at it. Can you tie up? This is a common position, and what happens here, both people are defensive and both people are in negative flow. Why is that? Because they're stagnant, they're not moving. One overhook on the neck and one on the delivery system. We're going to use this as a position to move away from. Yes, it neutralizes the situation. Unfortunately, it neutralizes the situation. So next, what Mike's going to do is he's going to drop an arm and watch him swing around Sean's hip, moving his hips to the side. Now he's at an angle. As he does, he's going to slide down the shoulder to the elbow. Put his hips out a little. Now, once again, look, he's not grasping. You can see that this finger's free because the cone here is at the Allen wrench of his thumb and pointer finger. Once he's here, he can body contour down to the wrist, but he's controlling the lunar plexus, and by controlling this delivery system and by lifting this shoulder, he can control the solar plexus. So this is a good application of blows, or for doing a move through, attentionally saturating him with inertia. Last three positions. This one, I won't tell you it's my favorite, but I already did. This one, you've already bracketed half of his body. It's an overhook. Turn this way. Stop. It's an overhook where you're driving diagonally into his torso with your elbow. So you're moving into his solar plexus. This isn't stabilizing his body, it's moving through his body. Plus, let's say he has this overhook here. You're either under or over on the elbow. This will be important later. But even if you're here, you've crossed his body. So you can pull down and apply blows whenever you want, or come inside and start careening through him. Next, notice, this will be important later, turning the head down and out. Remember this from the basic exercise. To move 2-on-1. When you're 2-on-1 arm, turn towards me a little. The goal here is not to grab it with your hands, but to wedge it between you. This will be important for causing distraction at the elbow and controlling the shoulder joint. Your shoulder has to be over so that you can almost touch your own hand. If it's not, then it's your arm strength. Here, this is a mechanical brace. Lastly, double contour onto his wrists. This tends to be a neutral position unless it's used appropriately, which is heavy handing him, driving his hands down as you move into blows. Drive his hands down. Remember how we said this before. You move from here and you body contour to his hands. Now you're free to change levels and go high. Maybe switch in and move through him, or apply blows as you rise and wash over him, turning the tide.